Hey guys, Dark Humility here. You can always catch me at twitch.tv/Dark Humility for 6 to 7 days a week of Diablo 2 action. We're going to be going hard February 16th, 5 p.m. PT on the ladder. Hope to see you guys all there, softcore and hardcore. Of course, I'll be playing hardcore ladder. I'm going to be killing it. Today, we are presenting to you the D2R Patch 2.6 Definitive Tier Lists. These are the tier lists that will be on Maxroll very shortly. Maxroll.gg, if you don't already know. Your authoritative source for everything D2R and all kinds of other ARPGs if you play them as well. I draft all the tier lists for the D2R Maxroll, and so I will be presenting them to you here today on this YouTube video. Of course, we have the overall late game tier list for patch 2.6, the ladder start tier list for early game builds, and the strength of the early game builds. So this is more late game focused, early game focused overall. Uber tier list, density destroying, how hard and how fast and how much AoE and how much damage can builds do to tons of enemies and high player count as fast as possible. Targeting elites, which have best loot tables in the game. And then, of course, Chaos Prep, Terror Zone, Experience Terror Zone, Loot, and Runewords. So many awesome tier lists, of course. I am the tier list guy, if you guys don't know. I do extensive tier list work and testing work on tons and tons and tons of builds. I played virtually every build myself as well. And everyone on the Maxroll team also has crazy amounts of experience at various stages in the game and in tons and tons of builds as well. And so this was not just my work, this is a collaboration. In the end, I did create the original drafts, but in the end we came up with something that's even more polished and more solid for patch 2.6. So in patch 2.6, we got a lot of things that happened. We had bug fixes, we had some quality of life updates, we had 8 to 9 new runewords, depending on really how you count it. Those things are going to be the major drivers of any movement on these tier lists today. Of course, I'll introduce these tier lists and what it is, but I'm mainly going to be talking about what's changed from previous seasons. So if you want explanations for why things are where they're still at and they haven't moved, I recommend watching maybe the 2.5 video that I made. So maybe you can have more understanding of like why things are where they're at and how it works. But when I introduce each tier list, that should be readily apparent as well. Of course, we'll have chapters in the video for each of the tier lists as I go over them. We do it every ladder on D2R. We do it every ladder on Project Diablo 2. So definitely check out my tier list work and all these awesome tier lists with even better graphics on Maxroll. They look very pretty on maxroll.gg. They surely do. If you don't know what they look like, now they're not updated yet on Maxroll, but if you don't know what they look like, they look very good. See, they look very nice, very pretty. Right, S A B C D F look very nice on here. I've actually just updated them on Maxroll. We just have to publish the drafts, so they're ready to go. Soon we'll have them. Indeed, yeah. This is the late game one, for instance, and it shows movement from the previous season. Good stuff. And all the builds, of course, we have build guides for on Maxroll as well, at least for the late game. So many insanely awesome builds. Yeah, believe it or not, Maxroll has build guides for every one of these builds that's listed here, so definitely check it out in case you've ever been interested in making any of this stuff. It's kind of cool. So yeah, we're going to post the link, of course, to these tier lists as well below the video, so you guys can explore them yourself. Like I said, I'm just going to be introducing each one, and then I'm going to be talking about movement. All right, enough spinning around, enough talking about the tier list. Talking about the tier list. We're going to start actually talking about the tier list. Alright, so the first one up today for patch 2.6 is the late game PvE tier list, which is the overall late game tier list. is based on a build's best scenario and their overall versatility in the game. So how many of those end-game activities can they do well in terms of farming, all kinds of types of farming, Ubers, density clearing, how well they can clear players 8, how well they can target in players 1. Any of these other tier lists pretty much make up the major tasks in the game, and all the way up at least through chaos prep here, and those kind of feed into this tier list. And so, how well does the build perform? If a build specializes in something and is just super insanely good at something as well, it might not have high versatility, but their best scenario is so strong that it justifies maybe a higher rank as well. So that's kind of what this all is in this tier list. Every build is kind of good. It's an overall ranking based on how many things it does well and how well it just does everything and how well it does its best thing. So let's talk about the movement now on this particular tier list. So we've got Phoenix Strike. Yes, this is the most important thing to talk about in this patch, and it's also the first thing we're going to be talking about. Phoenix Strike went up 3 whole tiers. That is not a mistake. Maxroll doesn't have that magenta. Nice. Yeah, no, it's blue. It's all that blue and black. All right, anyway. 3 whole tiers on the Phoenix Strike Assassin. Why? The major driver of this is the Runeword Mosaic. So, Mosaic is going to have 50% chance of retaining charges. That means if you have 2 Mosaic Claws, you'll have 100% chance of retaining charges. What does that mean exactly? Also, when you use a finisher, the finisher resets the timer on the charges. So, that's another change in the patch. What does that mean? It means you could just jump around, teleport around, dragonflight around, and you can just keep using your finishers. On Phoenix Strike, you can stack up every single one of those swirly balls, Fists of Fire, Claws of Thunder, Blades of Ice, and of course Phoenix Strike, and even things like Cobra Strike, or even Tiger Strike if you want extra leech. You can stack them all at once, and you can retain all of them, and explode the entire screen in Players 8 with a full build. This build is insane with a full build. It has been tested internally by, of course, Maxroll, and we'll see that this build is going to be a huge player in Season 3. This is going to be a massive build, massively powerful. No videos yet, but it's okay. Once the patch comes out, I'm sure you're going to see all kinds of videos. This thing is nuts. It will shred Players 8 cows, instantly blowing up whole packs. It will blow up instantly huge packs of Players 8 Chaos Monsters. I've seen it with my own 2 eyes. That build is nuts. Matter of fact, it's probably towards the top of S tier and not the bottom of S tier when we're talking about where it stands. Once again, this is the late game tier list, so consider that. Without gear, it still does really well even at lower player count when you don't have Infinity, but when you have Infinity, Double Mosaic, Enigma, and all that other fun stuff, it is going to destroy. Another build that is highly affected by this patch, and we've seen major movement here, movement we're going to have to report today, along with all the other movement, is the Lightning Sentry Assassin Traps. Now, yeah. Hey, thank you so much, Swamp Donkey, for 8 months as a member of Xana's attack squad that goes to the machine, the Arcane Disciples. Chat spam the size of Xana in the chat for him. Okay. The Lightning Sentry Assassin, and negative enemy resistances on traps. That means Crescent Moon, negative res, Griffin's negative res, huge deeps. Those traps are going to be hitting insanely hard now because they can hit a lot harder. They're actually clearing a lot more competitively with the builds, and they're actually benefiting from the Sunder Charms in this patch. So unlike last patch where the builds that were benefiting pushed this build back down to A tier, this build moved right back up to S tier now because now it is benefiting to the same degree the rest of the builds are from the previous patches, Sunder Charms and other things. Of course, Phoenix Strike doesn't even need Sunder Charms because it does all three. It can kill everything. It shreds everything, all sources of damage. That thing is going to be insane. But Lightning Sentry, Definitely seeing an insane build again, so it's definitely got a ton of potential for ultimate insane power. As a matter of fact, it might even be able to do Ubers this season. Hasn't been tested yet, but I'm sure people will come out with it soon. At any rate, there you have it for the S tier. Those are the two major movers into the S tier. Alright, so let's talk about the A tier here. So we've got Strafe, Amazon. Strafe, of course, being able to clear almost any density in the game, having amplified damage with Amp and shredding anything in high density. That thing, of course, is a monster. A monster. So Strafe, if you guys didn't see the patch notes, had a bug fix that was still causing it to do 75% weapon damage. Now it will be doing 100% weapon damage. It was already clearing player's 8 with relative ease, and now it is going to shred player's 8 with relative ease. The only thing that's really holding it back from S tier is mobility. So maybe it has a little bit less versatility as well. It can't be used in as many situations, but man, it is a crazy strong and crazy powerful build now. Just as much as you might expect some of the other ones. Of course, you also have the hustle weapon swap possibility too, if you want more attack speed on that wind force, which can allow you to use Pride and Might Mercenary, getting even higher damage values. So we have a Runeword moving it up on top of a bug fix. Pretty insane stuff. Dragon Talon Assassin now can sustain for good. Sustain huge deeps with Tiger Strike being up constantly with, once again, you guessed it, double mosaics. And the best part about all these assassin builds is you don't even need really insane base claws to put the mosaics in, because that's just how effective retaining charges is. The major problem with martial arts sin builds in previous patches and previous iterations of the game is that you had to keep charging up your charges every time you expended charges. That was the big issue, and if you don't ever have to do that, and your charges will stay as long as you attack monsters within a 14-second window, got some insane builds. So the martial sim builds are crawling up the tier list. We've got the trap builds crawling up the tier list. Wake of Fire benefits in the same way that Lightning Sentry Assassin does now. So now the Sunder Charm Flame Rift is going to benefit that one as well. And of course you have Phoenix, Faceted Swords, Hand of Justice, and of course things like Flickering Flame, all making this build a lot stronger as well. So Wake of Fire Assassin, look out for that one. That one's going to shred with gear. Once again, this is late game, but consider that, even early game, that build's going to be a beast. No doubt. Just need to start getting some negative enemy fire is, but in the late game, that thing's definitely showing way more power. And of course, Claws of Thunder Assassin, which doesn't necessarily use Phoenix Strike. You can just use Claws of Thunder itself. You don't need all those other things as well. Also having a very strong potential. Maybe not quite as much shreddage in Player's 8, but pretty close. You can still destroy really high player count very easy with just Claws of Thunder, which is pretty insane and opens up some other build options in terms of gear. So yeah, this isn't a bug. This is a feature. Martial sins have, throughout the entire history of Diablo 2, been at the bottom of the tier list, and now we are seeing them featured at the top, and that's really the big thing. The big mover is Mosaic in this season, really moving those things up, and the negative enemy res and the traps. Assassin builds getting some massive buffs, and assassin builds are no longer crap. As a matter of fact, Assassin is probably not even the worst class anymore. I don't know really what that belongs to after they've cleaned up so many skills, but I do know. I don't know, some people might still say it's Druid or something, but yeah, that might be true. But no matter how you count, no matter how you see it, this is really awesome stuff for the game. It's really cool to see after over 20 years, we're seeing some really cool builds become super viable and super strong. Another very interesting build that's making some waves here in patch 2.6 is the Enchant Sorceress. Yes, the Enchant Sorceress. What's up, Samuel? How you doing? Enchant Sorceress. Enchant Sorceress, you might say. Why Enchant Sorceress? Well, you might see buried deep within the patch notes something about enchant having double effectiveness than it used to on ranged weapons. So melee weapons always got that treatment. They were always just super powerful with enchant. But now ranged weapons can also be. This means enchant can stand on its own and is no longer only a support build potentially. So obviously you can still max out your plus skill gear and everything and get some pretty crazy high level enchant. However, now you can use Demon Machine and do 25,000 damage and pierce through things with a firebolt that destroys players 8, even players 8 cows. It's a little clunky, which is why maybe it's not quite as high as Fireball Sorceress, for instance. However, maybe not quite as much movement speed, takes a little bit of swapping. You need FCR and swap and then swap back and fire. But this is a deadly crossbow sorceress for the most part. The enchant's also insanely effective in other ways as well, such as enabling a very powerful mercenary elite hunting approach on a Nova enchant sorceress. And of course, it can still be used for its normal support functions. So look out for that build in patch 2.6. Enchant Sorc is more fun than ever to play by itself. You no longer need Enchant Double Dream. However, Enchant Double Dream is still absurdly strong as well. You can just rely on Enchant itself on the Sorceress and do some serious, dish out some serious pain. In the B tier, let's go take a look below here. Let's see what other major movement has happened this patch. Okay, one thing I should go over is that Blizzard Sorceress is still S tier. It was S tier before the Sunder Charms. It is S tier after the Sunder Charms. And a major change was that Cold Mastery is only 1/5 effective once a cold immunity is broken with a Sunder Charm. However, the truth is, Blizzard Sorceress never needed that, or a Sunder Charm, or anything of that nature to ever be super powerful. Blizzard Sorceress just does a crazy, insane amount of damage. Hey, thank you so much, Richie. Oh, no, Anonymous for Xanifying Richie. Let's get it. Blizzard Sorceress, though, is now just regular OP again instead of Ultra OP. So now it just won't instantly one-shot any cold immunities. So they took it back from the D2R OP of 2.5, the absurd OP, and they brought it back down to earth. That's pretty awesome to see. So that's really cool. Hey, thank you so much for the support, guys. You guys are beasts. So it's still S tier. You could have even made an argument that maybe in the late game it was like on its own tier, or even in the early, especially the early game, on its own tier. In the late game, I mean, other builds are always competitive with Blizzard, but at least anything in the S tier. But yeah, you could have made an argument on this list, which we'll get to, that this should have maybe been on its own island last season in the starter tier list. I kind of imagine. I mean, it's like the S double plus. Not anymore, though. Now you actually need negative enemy res gear potentially on the Blizzard Sorceress, in addition to Cold Mastery, to do what it did before, which is completely fair. However, it is still super, super strong. That being said, we are definitely seeing some movement here. I actually forgot to put some things here from some of the other cold builds. So because of that change, Orb can't totally tear up every single farming area in the game. Neither can Frost Nova, which means that now they are more restricted as to what they can farm, and they've lost some versatility. They don't do nearly as much damage as Blizzard, so they're much more affected by a change like that. It's why I thought just a direct nerf to Blizzard would be better than a change to Cold Mastery, because Cold Mastery was helping out some of these more underutilized cold builds. But they've been brought back down to B tier. These builds have been in a B tier before. I think this is where they were at in 2.4. And that is because now, once again, their lower damage values, plus the fact that they need a lot more negative res to kill cold immunes, means they just can't do as much anymore. Now, one point they're able to kill absolutely everything with, once again, none of that specialized gear. So some of these other cold sorceress builds are brought back down. That's some of the major movement we're seeing there from the last patch. Of course, we also have a new build. Of course, I've also written this new build, the Dragon Tail Assassin. Dragon Tail is also seeing some pretty big benefits from Mosaic. Maybe not as much as some of the other martial abilities, because it benefits a lot from negative enemy res a lot more, so maybe having double claw isn't necessarily the best approach. However, it can be, and with dual mosaics, it shreds at least lower player counts, and you can still use like one mosaic and Phoenix to absolutely tear up higher player counts if you're willing to charge up here and there. Dragon Tail has always done an absurd amount of damage, being able to elite target at pretty much any player count. So look out for this awesome new assassin build to make its debut on Maxroll or 2.6. In the B tier, not quite as smooth and not quite as overwhelmingly powerful as maybe some of its other counterparts in the S and A tier, but a super, super strong approach nonetheless. All right. And then, of course, we have the not smart on 2.6. What makes us the Assassin, Lightning Sentry, and Phoenix go up so much? So 2.6, yeah, we just talked about that. Or you guys can always watch the video on YouTube. I'm doing this live, of course, so I'll answer the question real quick. Basically, the patch allowed traps to pierce, so negative enemy res works with traps now on your gear. That's huge. That is why some of these trap builds, like Wake of Fire and Lightning Sentry particularly, are seeing some major upward movement. Phoenix Strike, of course, is mainly benefiting from Mosaic, which is going to be insane. Mosaic is a crazy good runeword. It's also got insane economy. It's just Mal and Gold a piece. Not super expensive. It's very, very nice stuff. Yeah. All right. At any rate, let's continue on and let's finish up with the overall late game tier list here. So some other major movement, we're seeing Exploding Arrow reaching the same level as Freezing Arrow. Some of the changes to these tier lists, like I said, were some cleanup, not necessarily things related to the patch. This is more cleanup. Exploding Arrow does just as much damage as Freezing Arrow in the right situations, and you can even hybridize the two. So Exploding Arrow and Freezing Arrow now both on the C tier, mostly just lacking mobility and just being a little bit clunky in terms of how they operate, which is why they're down here. And of course being more limited as to what they can kill to some degree. But super powerful builds nonetheless. Super insane stuff. Also, of course, Hustle can now boost the attack speed of Freezing and Exploding Arrow a bit more, making them slightly more effective, but not necessarily enough to really move them up a tier. If you don't know, Hustle only has Burst of Speed level 1 now, so it's not quite as effective as a pre-buff as it was in earlier iterations of the patch, but hey, it's still super strong. I'm not a huge fan of crazy pre-buff on every build anyway, so I think it's a good thing that they may be focused more on like other uses of it, but it definitely can still be used, especially on a Boson, because Strafe procs it so easily. Strafe is such a good proc of it. Very crazy stuff. One thing I actually forgot to mention that was actually in the B tier was that we have Multi-Shot Amazon moving up too as well. Kind of similar for similar reasons as Strafe. Not only can Enchant now apply the full measure of damage to ranged weapons, so Enchant kind of interacting with these builds a bit. We're also just seeing more upward mobility due to Hustle and just due to overall bug fixes and overall playability of the builds. And also a little bit of an adjustment on Multi-Shot. It was probably a bit underrated down in D tier before. It's very solid for a lot of things in AoE clear. It doesn't do as much damage as Strafe though, so it's still a tier below. Strafe can still hit a lot harder and deal with high player count even easier. Alright, and then of course, some other major stuff. This is a future build we have planned there. We got Holy Freeze Paladin. Just a decent elemental paladin approach. Nothing nearly as strong as Dream Paladin or anything like that, but pretty cool. And then of course, we have the Maul Druid. This is another new build coming up on Maxwell here for 2.6. This is also seeing some very interesting stuff. So you might see Fury is not moving. So that's one thing people might be curious to see, because there is a new rune word called Metamorphosis that is going to give some extra buff capabilities, especially to shapeshifting builds. That being said, it's not enough to like move things like Bear Sorceress, Fury Druid, and Maul Druid up tiers. They're just nice quality of life, and it's a nice solid helmet that can outperform other helmets in lots of situations. It's not a thing that enables ultra powerful builds like Mosaic. It's just nice. But Metamorphosis is a solid rune word, but it's not necessarily one that's gonna make these builds super powerful. They're still limited by mobility. This can still be quite clunky, so they're still towards the bottom of the tier list. They are very fun though, and I highly recommend checking out my Fury Druid and Maul Druid guides on Maxroll, as they are super fun builds that can clear players' 8. They can destroy Ubers, and they're a lot of fun. Every build on this tier list is capable of destroying various aspects of the game. It just depends on how much and how much versatility. Just because something's in the D tier, like Rift Assassin, for instance, doesn't mean it can't still elite snipe very well. Maybe not as fast and effective as some other builds, but doesn't mean it can't. Another thing I'd like to highlight here is that technically a lot of these guides are getting rewrites and getting upgrades. The Corpse Explosion Necromancer is now Mercenary Corpse Explosion Necromancer on Maxroll, which is mine as well, which is an approach where you just stack as much MF as possible on a Necromancer. You cast Amplify Damage, you jump in with the Mercenary, you blow it up, you move on to the next elite pack. Super effective approach on a Necromancer that doesn't require extensive summoning, using of poison or bone skills whatsoever. It's just a super effective farmer. Let's definitely check that out as well. At any rate, Maul will be on there. Maul is a little slow and clunky for most types of farming, but it is fun and it still kills stuff in players 8.
I can already tell that I'll be your best friend in this forsaken.
And of course, all the builds in the F tier that were last season are still in the F tier. Blaze and Rabies can be insane in cows, but practically nowhere else. And Werewolf Barbarian can kill the Ubers, and that's about all it can do. Super limited in terms of their utility and effectiveness, but even an F tier build has its day in the sun. Alright, let's go. So those are the major movement. Remember, you can access this tier list with exclamation tier list or a 2.6 tier list in the chat or in the link below the video. So remember to, if you want to explore this tier list yourself, you can explore all of these tier lists down below here. Of course, you can also see them on Maxroll, and they'll be a lot prettier, about to be published on Maxroll within the next couple days here before the ladders launch, probably as soon as tonight even. It's very possible. Okay, at any rate, yeah, I'm the tier list guy. I am the one that drafts the tier list for Maxroll, and we as a team decide on whether or not maybe there should be some adjustments, and they are now in their final form, so check them out. All right, at any rate, we're back to ladder start tier list. All right, this one hasn't seen much movement since 2.4, honestly. Most of the changes in 2.4 were the most impactful in this particular one. These are the builds that make the most impact in the very beginning of the game, and how good it is at playing in the beginning of the game in general, in terms of like farming those starting farming areas or supporting a team. So, how well can it farm Indariel or Mephisto or Travancore or anything that's going to give you loot early on, Hell Cows. How well is it going to support a team as well? How good is it at doing those types of things in terms of like a ladder push team? That's really what this tier list is about. So this is the late game. This is when you got full builds. Everything's got its max gear. This is how strong the builds are relative to one another and how, versatile they are and how what they do and whatnot. This is the early game one. Early game one, not seeing any movement at the very top. The very top is still dominated by builds like, the most powerful sorceresses for killing Travancore, Mephisto, and Indariel, as you might expect, because their loot tables are just that good. A build like Fist of the Heavens, which has insane utility for a team with its Conviction aura, and also Shreds with very limited gear. Something like the Support Barbarian, also one of the most powerful supports for a team. Just the, Battle Orders Barbarian. Clean, simple, effective. Of course, in the A tier as well, also not really seeing any movement as well. Shockwave, we were considering making a Shockwave build that was actually capable of damage on Maxroll, but Blizzard decided to say it was a bug and that they weren't going to support it because it was a bug, and so the bug damage on a Shockwave is no more. It is now only a support build once again, so it will be on the support ladder start tier list, but it will not be a build. There will be no build guide for any full build for it because it won't do damage anymore. So That's kind of sad. That's actually the saddest news of patch 2.6. I love pretty much everything else in the patch, so that's kind of a tragedy. But, you know, it's still an A tier support, still super solid team support. And then, of course, you have all these other builds that are just super solid, like, you know, getting torches on day one, clearing cows on day one, things like that. You know, these builds are all builds I'm sure you guys typically make in the beginning of ladder in the S and A tier. Once you go below that, these are less commonly made in the very beginning of the ladder, and so forth. Of course, we are also seeing some movement into B tier though, which is actually kind of interesting, because the Enchant Sorceress isn't only a damage dealing monster now, she also is just better as a support. So if you make physical builds and play alongside an Enchant Sorceress, you can get insanely strong, like a physical Boson or something similar. This used to be a C tier support build, and is now a B tier support build. Of course, it's limited to only helping out physical builds, which makes it a little bit more limited early on. But for starting new characters and whatnot, this thing is going to be monstrously powerful. So yeah, make sure to have an Enchant Sorc buddy to help you level, or just to help out your ultra powerful Strafe Zon to shred absolutely everything. So it's even better as a starting support build, so definitely get those Enchant Sorcs out there. That fix, making the range damage so much higher, is very impactful. And then, of course, everything else is pretty much where you would expect it to be for beginning of ladder farming. Approaches that aren't quite as dominant, but still super solid. I do recommend that everyone check out Rags to Riches Assassin. So we have Rags to Riches Druid now as well, but I made Assassin last season, and it is still super relevant, if not more relevant than ever this particular season, because now Assassin is beastly. So if you want to know how to start and get rich off of an Assassin, starting with nothing but the rags on your back, check out that guide in my entire Rags to Riches series on YouTube for starting every class except for Barbarian, which we still don't have one for. So, but we have a Rags to Riches for all the rest of them, so very cool. Barbarian's the toughest one. It's going to take maybe a 3-parter, so we'll see. All right. Very cool. Those guided playthroughs, you can just do it while listening or watching on the other screen. Very easy stuff to do. All right, just do it, smash it. Don't have to start a sorceress. All right, got Rags to Riches Sorceress too, just in case you want to know how to play the ultra meta. All right, we got C tier. We got just a new build in here. Frost Nova Sorceress is able to be a starter. You can start with it. It's not very good. It's decent. You know, it's as good as pretty much some of these other starting builds and has some potential early game farming, but compared to other approaches, not nearly as dominant. So it's here at the C tier. Of course, we have the Holy Freeze Paladin for the future, something that's possibly a B tier build, or D tier build, sorry. Phoenix Strike may be incredible with gear, but it's still going to be a pretty slow early game farmer. The only thing that keeps it out of F tier is its ability to kill virtually every monster because you have 3 sources of damage. But when you don't have gear, you know, when you just have starting gear, it's still going to be a little slow. There's definitely a lot of things you can farm on any starting build, though. It's just that it's going to be a bit slower and it's going to be a bit more limited. Of course, you don't have mosaics on a starter Phoenix Strike Assassin, so martial builds are going to need mosaics, and mosaics aren't starter gear in my opinion. That's, you know, equivalent of a Vex and an Is, so that's you got to get some gear first, right? You got to get some other stuff. So while we are seeing some really cool martial builds make their debut, as a ladder starter, starting out as a martial sin versus, let's say, a trap sin. Trap sins are much better to start out as than martial sins still. But that doesn't mean you can't. Go ahead, try it. Smash it. We also have some other newcomers to this list as well. You can start on Voice of Reason on a Rift Assassin. And of course, on a Maldred, you can kill things like Eldritch and Shank in the beginning, and that's probably about it. But hey, there's some things you can kill even on some of the hardest builds to start with, which are the ones in the F tier. Things like Fury Druid, Zeal Paladin. And no, Poison Dagger is not a build. It's F double triple minus, so it's not on here. Okay. Don't ask about it. It's not on Maxroll. No, mate, it's foolishness. Thank you so much, guys, for the support for real, though. Fish Bait getting Xana 5 by Cormeria. Xana taking over Cryptic Panda for 13 months in a row. 2.6 is releasing on the 15th, so that is in about 36 hours. Prepare yourselves. Is it on Mineral? Yeah, it's definitely on Mineral. Absolutely. All right, let's go over the next tier list here. So this one's all about consistency, gear level, you know, how much gear does it require to kill the Ubers, how consistent does it kill, and how fast it kills, which is probably the most important one, the Ubers. Smite requires almost no gear, though. It's super consistent. It's fast, but it's not the fastest. But yeah, you know, you always got to give major props to Smite on this list. You know, Smite is like one of the kings. I believe in the first iteration of this tier list, Smite was alone in the S tier. Sunder Charms and making Infinity and Spears, things of that nature have made these two builds crazy strong because now they can shred Uber Mephisto. That used to not be a thing. Plague also made that possible too with its lower resist proc. So there's a lot of things in previous patches that have really made a lot of other builds now that can clear Ubers faster than Smite, maybe with higher gear levels, but they're insanely strong, insanely fast, and insanely consistent. So Smite requires the least amount of gear, though, so that's always the good one for that. And then, of course, Phoenix Strike is going to shred the Ubers now, too, and you got your Double Mosaic. Yes, it can even shred the Ubers at one of the fastest rates in the game. Dragon Talon kicks in, Max Tiger Strike. That thing is going to smash the Ubers. They already got shredded without Tiger Strike, and now it's going to be gangbusters with maintaining those charges. Yeah, Dragon Talon Assassin was arguably already kind of a contender for the S tier, always on the Uber killing tier list anyway, because it kills so fast. But now, there's no doubt about it. No! Holy moly, Anonymous going ham. We got Dark, Chifov, Monkey, Ronson, Far Shadows, Dragoon, and Murky, all getting Xanified members of the team. Remember, guys, we got teams announced. There's still a couple of spots in some teams. Sign up, and you'll be put on a team, and we can have fun on launch. Remember, launch is the 16th, 5 p.m. Thursday, PT, Pacific time. All right. Anyway. Haven't played. What did they do to Lightning Fury Amazon? Well, it's crushing the Ubers. That's really all. I mean, it crushes everything. Lightning Fury will destroy high density. Lightning Fury will destroy the Ubers. Lightning Fury with Charge Strike in Lightning Fury will destroy the whole game. That's just one of the strongest builds in the game. It's just insane. Anyway, so one thing that's kind of interesting here, though, is there's actually a pretty major impact of the Cold Mastery Sunder nerf, because Duriel's cold immune, and now even with maximum Cold Mastery, Duriel, even with a lot of negative res in your gear, will still have a lot of resistance, which is going to make it really hard to kill Duriel with Blizzard now. So Blizzard was shredding even the Ubers last season, and now arguably it's not even really that good of an approach for killing the Ubers at all anymore. You could use Doom. That's absolutely the case. It has been removed from this list, though, so you will not be seeing it here anymore. You'll have a lot of negative res, but even with Doom, the lowest you can get his res is like 0, and he still regens. And yeah, it's not very good anymore. So it went from being like one of the top Uber approaches all the way up in the S tier last season, and now it is being removed. Very, very interesting change there.
A spare weapon, some gold, a small gem is all I
trade
want
is
in
real.
exchange for the equipment you'll need on
goodness.
whatever quest you might undertake. No, don't be shy.
So much hype for this season. So much hype. Thank you guys, and thank you guys so much for the support of all the awesome stuff we do here. Make sure to check out Rags to Riches Druid, our newest installment of that series, if you guys want more awesome stuff. Okay, anyway. So what we're going to do here, thank you so much, though, for real, all you guys. Crazy support going on here. All right, trying to get through this.
I can already tell that I'll be your best friend in this
for Uber killing. These are all still super strong approaches, potentially, just because of how much damage they do and how consistent that damage is. Blizzard just isn't, that Blizzard really needed that broken Cold Rupture charm to be a uber killer that was competitive, so we just took it off because it's going to be frustrating to use now against certain uber bosses. All right, B. Frenzy, Barbarian, and Lightning Sorceress, still in the B tier, of course. Very nice stuff, rounding it out. Did you know you can shred the ubers with a Lightning Sword and Crack of the Heavens? Absolutely. Go check out the guide for that if you want to learn more. Fun stuff. Alright, C. We got no movement out of C as well. Pretty much the same builds, all kinds of interesting sorceresses. Fury Druid does a solid job killing the ubers, but nothing insanely fast or insanely special. You know, Summon Druid can kill the ubers. A lot of really cool stuff just in general. Of course, Summon Necromancer is the strongest uber killer from the Necromancer as well. Very nice stuff. And then, of course, we have some new builds. This one should have always been on this tier list, so this is a bit of cleanup, actually. We have a Blade Fury Assassin on Maxroll. This is pretty much what Blade Fury is. I can already tell that I'll
be your best friend in this forsaken camp.
Like, it's literally its best thing to do is killing ubers, and we didn't have it on there, so that's kind of a joke. It's not one of the most effective or, you know, most consistent uber killers in the universe, but it's insanely, I mean, that's what it does. It's one of its best things, definitely. Maul Druid, once again, the new build written by yours truly, will be on there as well. This build is
spare weapons,
solid,
gold,
effective.
A small gem
just a bit
is
slower,
all I want in exchange for the equipment you'll need on whatever quest you might undertake. No, don't be shy.
And Werewolf Barbarian.
Thanks for your content.
The only thing it can do is kill the ubers. However, it's actually pretty hard and it's inconsistent, even with good gear. Werewolf Barbarian is just in a poor place ever since the attack speed changed to shape-shifting in patch 2.4. And, you know, it does what it does badly, but, you know, it survives. That's about it. Wow, such crazy stuff. Thank you so much, Janji. 500 small gems, 100 small gems from Cryptic Panda. Oh my goodness. Straight to Geed's Gambling Bar. Geed tasting it. You're going to miss the first 3 days of Season 3? Well, that's alright. You know, you're not alone. There's a lot of guys that have to work and do some stuff. We'll see you guys, though, when you guys are ready. It's going to be hype for sure. I actually was considering not doing a push, but so many people came back and wanting to do it, so I was like, let's do it. Let's start. Let's try a push, and if that doesn't work, we're gonna do some fun farming, and you know, gonna make some cool builds afterwards as well, no matter what. Okay. At any rate, density destroying tier list. So this is about blowing up a room in Players 8 as fast as possible. Higher the tier, the faster they can blow up a room in Players 8. Pretty simple. Any build that is on here has some kind of area of effect or ability to attack multiple monsters simultaneously. Alright. So, these two builds have been the king and queen of density destroying since this list's inception. Poison Nova, with Poison Nova plus Corpse Explosion, just crazy strong in Players 8 with a full build. Lightning Fury, even stronger to some degree. This has always been like the S plus and the S minus of the tier. However, Phoenix Strike Assassin making its debut, it's always struggled. It used to do a ton of damage. Yeah, if you charge everything up and expended all your charges, you would do the same damage you do now, but now you can maintain that throughout the entirety of a zone, destroying everything in Players 8 in one shot in the entire screen. So yeah, Phoenix Strike is one of the strongest density destroyers in the game now, period. In patch 2.6, once again, check that out. Claws of Thunder, also an insane density destroyer in patch 2.6. We kind of went over this a lot of this kind of stuff in the overall tier list, but in the density destroying tier list, it's still the same. Strafe Amazon is built for density destroying, and with the bug fix, she is going to hit insanely hard. If you put Enchant on top of that, she's pretty much going to one-shot everything, especially once she gets Amp on there. Pretty insane. And then, of course, the new Enchant Sorceress, piercing through everything with 25,000 damage with the ranged damage, huge range damage buff for Enchant is definitely making its debut on this list here in this season. Wake of Fire, a multi-shot, same thing. Very strong approaches for density clearing. Wake of Fire is going to be doing more damage than ever in higher player count because you actually get negative enemy res on the traps. and you'll be able to deal with fire immune. So this is going to shred. Wake of Fire is going to be stronger than ever. It's going to be a little bit closer to its PD2 counterpart, I would definitely say for sure. If you guys play that mod. We have multi-shot Amazon. Holy moly. Pretty strong too. More options, burst of speed, able to get more attack speed, easier on wind force, able to crush it even harder. Very cool stuff in this patch coming up. Also, it just was readjusted up because it's always had some ability to clear and high player count, just depends on the monster type. Okay. And then, this was removed from this list. This is a bit of cleanup here. Bone Spear. Bone Spear is good in low player count. It is not meant for high player count. You can use Corpse Explosion on any build on a Necromancer, of course. But just like Mercenary Corpse Explosion, they aren't built for the high player count. You know, those are the Summon Necromancers and the Poison Necromancers. Those are the ones that are truly actually built for a high player count, and they're built to destroy it. These Necromancer builds are built for targeting and hitting up elites and killing them quickly and other things of that regard. So that was removed from the list. We have Dragon Tail Assassin also on this list. A bit lower though. It's not as strong of a density clear as an elite sniper, but Dragon Tail has a high amount of AoE and it can destroy a lot of things in an area. The AoE isn't insanely high or anything though, but it pretty much one-shots everything once it gets going. New build on there. Frost Nova coming down mostly because it can't shred every single cold immune anymore. Once again, kind of just like on the overall list as well. Of course, you can still shred P8 on monsters that aren't cold immune with full build pretty easily. And then, of course, Wind Druid coming up on this one. That's a bit of a cleanup there. Wind Druid can definitely shred P8, just doesn't have the biggest AoE, and it takes a little bit longer. But it's definitely not as bad as builds below it. Some of these other builds, same thing. Blade Fury. Blade Fury can now actually benefit from the negative physical res as well on things like Decrepify. So you're actually going to see Blade Fury and Sentinel used a lot more often. It's a lot stronger now as an approach for destroying high player count. So definitely try that out. Remember, those Sentinels are traps, and they weren't benefiting from negative res either. So it's actually very possible that this build is actually a tiny bit underrated. Wouldn't be surprised if maybe that even comes up a bit further next season as a bit of cleanup again, as we learn some additional things about how strong that is. It's pretty solid. Same thing with Ubers. It's on the Uber tier list. I definitely think it's not as strong as some of the other approaches, maybe, but we'll have to see. It's got a lot of potential. All right. And then, of course, we have the Blaze Sorceress and Rabies Druid moving up. Yeah, even though they have only one scenario they can kill, pretty much, which is cows, they can still clear players 8 cows effectively. So that is definitely putting them a little bit higher now up on the list. Fury Druid wasn't on here. It should have been because it attacks multiple targets. But anything like these physical abilities that attack multiple targets but either have low damage values like Warcry or low AoE kind of, or just really low AoE and, clunkily attacks multiple targets, is going to be lower on this list, but they are still capable of clearing high player count. It's just going to be slower. Once again, F tier doesn't mean like the build is garbage, never play it. It's just a relative ranking in terms of like how it ranks compared to other builds in these various tasks or overall. Doesn't mean it's still not strong. Ultimately, they're a lot closer than you might think, but it's there are key differences in mobility, clear speed, and just overall damage and AoE that really make the difference. It's really all it really comes down to, and that's what defines the meta. You don't have to be a meta. You don't have to be a meta ho though. No one does. No one does. No one gotta do that. No one gotta do that. I know a lot of my fellow D2 players out there are hipsters. Trust me. I love playing interesting builds too, and that's why that's why I make some of the more interesting builds on Maxroll, and that's why I have guides for them. So. Trust me, there's some of these builds are really fun. They can be effective if played well, no matter what. Even if they might not objectively have quite as much effectiveness as some other builds. All right, elite hunting. Berserk is still king. I don't think Berserk will ever not be king on this tier list. This is like the one tier list where there is a clear king. I would have said last season maybe Blizzard should have been the queen of ladder start. I definitely think that was probably fair. Not anymore with the readjustment, but last season you could have made that argument. This season though, Berserk Barbarian, 70% find item is busted. In terms of just being able to kill elites and extract as many items as possible from the game of highest quality as fast as possible, nothing can do it like a Berserk Barbarian. Also with Sorceress, teleport frames. Of course, I've explained this in previous iterations of the tier list, and like I said, I'm not going to go over every single build. Definitely look at videos from previous tier lists or previous iterations, and you guys will learn a lot there. Martial Arts Assassin #1 this ladder. She's right there, man. She's right there. She's up there, man. Martial arts builds are some of the top builds in the game now. Gonna be a lot of people gonna play that for sure, and I wouldn't blame them. All right, anyway. For elite hunting though, we actually see multiple martial arts assassins making their debut in the A tier now. Of course, you got Enchant Sorceress able to do that as well with really good teleport frames. Demon Machine is real. Enchant Sorc is going to get rewritten to reflect that, so check out the guide on Maxroll when that is updated. It's not updated yet. Remember, everything will be updated after the patch goes live in about, I think it was like early 15th, so it'll be updated throughout that day and before the ladders, so check out all the stuff after this. They waited until the last second to push the patch, let me tell you, so definitely everything's down to the wire. Alright, anyway, so we got all this. Cool stuff. Everything else is still super strong. These abilities mostly just being held back, honestly, by the fact that they don't have a fine item, but they still have good teleport frames and they can insta kill anything, so that's really cool. And they can stack MF as well. They don't even need martial skillers, so Magic Find is a very big part of elite hunting because it's all about being able to have mobility, stack Magic Find, and then target elites and get those really good loot tables and kill minions around them. And just do it as fast as possible. So right there, those builds looking pretty good on this tier list. We got Frost Nova Sorceress going down because once again, there's just less elites to target and less areas to kill, losing a little bit of that versatility for elite hunting and making it a little bit harder for that build to operate with the Cold Mastery nerf. Or rather adjustment to where it probably should be, because it was so busted last season, people only played Cold Sorceresses, even in late game. That was very sad. That was very sad. One-shotting Oblivion Knights with a cold character, that's probably a bit much. They were doing it without gear too, with like full towels. It was nuts. I did it too, so I'm one of them. All right, Wind Druid. This is just an adjustment, so Wind Druid is a B tier on the overall tier list. Overall, as a pure Hurricane variant, it is most effective at elite hunting in Players 1, which is what this is. You just kill the elite. Elites always drop the same quality of item no matter the player count. Wind Druid, Hurricane variant, solid. The only thing that holds it back mostly is ability to stack Magic Find slightly and movement speed, or mobility with teleport. Most of these builds are enabled by Enigma because it's all about moving between packs as fast as possible. And then, of course, got all these builds down here. This one can have mobility. Similar things. Rift Assassin is one of those quintessential off-meta hipster builds that elite targets pretty effectively. And it's down there in the D tier. And then, of course, we have some F tier ones that they don't even really have that mobility really to move between packs. They could slap an Enigma and transform and untransform. You could do some other weird stuff too, but it's very slow. And same thing with like Werebear Sorceress, untransforming kind of action going on, slowing the builds down. Or just, not always having enough damage to one-shot the monsters, or having a slower wind-up time, or being a bit clunkier versus just like one-shotting the monster, which is pretty much everything in A tier. Being able to stack tons of MF because it's just overloaded on damage, and having good mobility, or what's an S tier, is also having good mobility, being overloaded on damage, and then also having crazy ability to get an additional item with find item. So Berserk Barbarian's kind of nuts. There's other barbarians that can do that, but they're so much clunkier, so it's just not the same. And they don't naturally get all that damage without putting their points not in find item. Team E has 2 spots still. It's true. Wow, Corny, that's mean. You know, he knows where you sleep. That's it's bad to trash talk people that know where you sleep. That's all I gotta say, Alright. That's all I gotta say about that. Alright, Chaos Prep. Got some other major movement this patch on this particular list. Definitely seeing some new builds being able to prep Diablo so much easier now. Once you charge up on any of these, Claws of Thunder charges up faster, doesn't do quite as much damage in P8. You gotta try to spawn Diablo and Player's 8 on this list as fast as possible. Phoenix Strike can destroy Player's 8, but you have to spend a decent amount of seconds to charge everything up, so that's gonna slow down your overall clear speed. So it's making a debut on that list though, which is pretty cool. Once you've charged everything up once though, you're good on the double mosaic version of the build. Frost Nova can't shred the Oblivion Knights anymore, but your Mercenary can still kill this ace, so that's fine. Goes down a bit though. Firebolt Meteor, this is just a cleanup adjustment. It's still a hugely fire immune area. Even with a ton of negative enemy res, it'll be slower than some of these other builds. And some other fire builds are slow-ish and not as reliable, even with Sunder and everything else, but they can do it. Cool. Including Wake of Fire also being on here too. Yes, you can destroy Player's 8 Chaos with fire builds now. It's a thing, but it's still not insanely fast. Fissure's got physical damage too, though, so Fissure's kind of nuts. Fissure Volcano Armageddon. Great build. Alright, anyway, so that's pretty much it for these. Lightning Sentry also coming up a bit too, because now it can actually deal with the huge amount of lightning resistance on the Venom Lords. And the lightning immune and Stormcaster is a lot better, even without Death Sentry. So you're going to see her put out more damage in there. Still not the most insane teleport frames, because this is all about being as fast as possible, and it has some wind-up time on the traps, but still very solid. Of course, everywhere else in the game, she's an insane density destroyer, destroying
your best friend in this
the full build extremely well. It's just about how fast you can spawn Diablo in P8, so some of these builds are a bit slower, but still solid. And things like Lightning Sword, Blizzard Sword, Berserk, and Hammered In are just insanely fast in Chaos. They will kill the monsters instantly. All right. And so, let's actually let's go over now some of the final tier lists and some of the final movement and some of the final important stuff is going down here in this patch 2.5. All right, so, or sorry, 2.6. It's like 2023. I haven't. It's like the middle of February, and I still think it's 2022. All right, anyway, time just going. All right, here we go. This should come as to no surprise to anyone. So Runewords are tiered on the Runeword tier list based on how many builds use them, so how widespread is their use on meta builds, not necessarily just niche builds. If they're only used on niche builds, they'll probably be rated quite a bit lower. If they're used on really solid builds, they'll be rated higher. If they have great rune economy in terms of being worth the runes that they're put in, as in like they're really solid runewords that give insane stats that are much more competitive with all the other runewords than the other runewords, they're higher up. So what we have here is we have some new runewords. We're not really going to talk about every other runeword on this list. You can check it out on Maxroll or on the spreadsheet here, of course. People have called me master of the spreadsheet. This is just another one of those spreadsheets. All right, here we go. Gonna do this one. It's a lot. All right, as you can see at the very bottom, I mean, you have some very niche runewords here that are hardly ever made, or just bad, just really bad. And then, in D, you have some that are, occasionally made. They got some decent uses here and there. C ones are, they're decent. You're definitely going to get use cases out of them, but they're not going to be insane, and they're not going to be used all the time. And then, B and higher is crust. So Mosaic, the new runeword, the claw runeword, potentially providing 100% uptime for charges on martial sins, making them beasts comparatively to how they've ever been in Diablo 2, and by itself bringing up the whole martial arts skill tree, which are now some of the strongest builds in the game. And of course, only requiring a goal and a Mao for all that effort. Yeah, super insane rune economy, super strong runeword. Could come to no surprise to anyone. Some of the other new rune words in patch 2.6 here. By the way, 2.6 rune words are ladder only, so these are going to be designated on the tier list as ladder only. All right, ladder only. They are. You will not be able to make these on non-ladder, so make sure to make a new ladder character to make any of these.
I can already tell that I'll be your best friend in this
So on Maxroll, it will have a star next to it. Ladder only. Don't try to make it on non-ladder. Don't do it. It's not possible. You can make the 2.4 rune words now on non-ladder, which is really cool. But yeah, it's these are ladder only. All right. Bulwark. Bulwark is a very sick rune word for its rune economy, requiring very, very little. It just requires a soul rune, I believe, an IO, and that's about it. And then you can get life leech, maximum life, hit recovery, and of course damage reduction, percentage damage reduction. So it's like a mini vampire gaze, but you don't have to get lucky and find it from Mephisto. You can just get some runes, slap it on a 3-socketed helmet. Boom, your mercenaries got crazy survivability as long as they can get like something with resistances on it, like smoke. So you put a smoke armor, bulwark helm, voila, your mercenary survives things. Yeah, really cool. Pretty much used on every starter mercenary in the game now. It's not like insanely OP though. There's still plenty of options that can compete or exceed it even in the early game. It's not giving you the it's not used on every single mercenary or every single build as well. It's still somewhat optional. However, it is a very beautiful, beautiful item. Whoa, that is some crazy stuff coming in. Man, these scam trains are real. Holy moly. Chazzy Elite, my man, Ron Sonite, Loop Gaming, and Fadi G, all being xenofied against their will. Thank you so much, guys, for this insane support from Anonymous there. I will protect you. No, you will protect me, man. Your leap is going to be powerful. Your screams are going to save everyone's life. You're the bulwark, man. You're the bulwark of the team. This is the bulwark of the game now. So A tier is solid. You can notice there's other similar rune words like Ancient's Pledge in here and things like this that are insane rune economy that are used on tons of builds to make them a lot stronger or have much higher survivability. Hustle Weapon is actually pretty nuts. You can get... So not only can we pre-buff and get better frames from it with Strafe very easily, or maybe with Frenzy even, if you use 2 of them. This weapon now has level 1 Fanat for Mercenaries. So before you pretty much only could like make an Insight even on something like a Zeal Paladin, or, well, that's a bad example because he's got Fanaticism already. But something like a Fury Druid. Now you can get Fanaticism Aura. Now it's only level 1, but you can get it on top of Might Aura in the early game on an Act 2 Mercenary. So you can get 2 auras and you can get more attack ratings. So this is a very cheap mercenary weapon that only requires 3 socketed weapons as well. So they're very easy to acquire. And it's going to enable a lot of builds, physical builds. It's going to have a lot of swap It's going to have a lot of swap potential. Its rune economy is pretty insane. It only requires a co-rune. So burst of speed plus fanaticism. Really good stuff. Making some mercenaries more powerful. Making a lot of physical builds more powerful.
I can already tell that I'll be your best friend in this forsaken camp.
That one's definitely up in the A tier. Definitely something that's going to be made a lot. Maybe not as often as Insight, which is in the S tier. I mean, Insight still, It's still your quintessential Act 2 Mercenary Runeword, but just a really solid option here for sure. I have no idea, Sheepo. I still want to know that myself. Onyx Mephisto, thank you so much for the follow. Welcome to the Cult of Xanander. Stay. Heads for his deal. L Law as well. Thank you guys so much for the follows. Vargful follows, support, Affinity, Robert Fisher. Thank you guys. Thank you everyone. All right. Other new rune words. Hustle Armor. Now, before they buffed it in the newest and the final iteration of the Hustle Armor, I would have said this armor was like D tier maybe. It was terrible. Like, it only had like some faster run walk and a little bit of increased attack speed, and it was pretty bad. Like, I don't understand. I mean, even for the rune economy, you probably wouldn't make it. It was definitely like a gloom. You know, it was like something that where the runes didn't really justify what it gave you exactly, so it would have been pretty bad. But the new Hustle Armor is a lot of attack speed, almost as much attack speed as Treachery. Ton of fast run walk. Evade, so while walking or running, you can even dodge attacks, which is pretty insane. And then, just like the Amazon can naturally, if you don't know how OP that ability is, I mean, just play an Amazon, you'll figure it out. And then 10 all resistances were also added to it. So now it's like an armor that is much easier to get to than Treachery in a lot of cases because it's not a lem. You can put it on your Mercenary, you can put it on yourself as well. And it's actually better than a Treachery in a lot of builds because a lot of builds just really want to run fast. And it will help a decent number of builds, especially in combination with Vigor Aura, keep up in Terror Zones, potentially. Maybe not quite as fast as teleporters, but you'll at least get the experience. So this armor in its current version is pretty nice. And also it doesn't override burst of speed like Treachery would on an assassin, which makes this really attractive potentially for an assassin particularly. So definitely check out the Hustle Armor. Hustle Armor is going to be seeing some serious use here in patch 2.6. It's still not like insane though. I would still definitely say there's plenty of rune words that just straight up outstrip it. Like Treachery is I'd consider to be an A tier rune word. And of course with all of its uses, also pre-buffing for Ubers as well. But it's still super solid and definitely going to be pretty solid. Said solid like 7 times. Okay, anyway. Metamorphosis. Metamorphosis is a beastly rune word. It is a new one, giving crazy amount of shape-shifting skills. Cannot be frozen. On a mercenary, on a helmet, it can be on a helmet with additional plus skills, giving like up to 8 rabies, plus 8 to fury, pretty crazy amounts. And then of course also giving buffs with Mark of the Bear, Mark of the Wolf, making that character tanky. It's still not clearing insanely fast, but you can become insanely tanky on a shape-shifting build, meaning that you can pretty much run up against any monster you want in the game and just be a brick wall. You can just tank anything you possibly want and kill anything once you have weapons powerful enough. It's definitely a fun... it's going to make shape-shifting builds feel a lot better. However, you know, they're still not going to be insanely fast because of it necessarily, but they're going to be insanely good. So they're going to feel a lot better for sure. And then, of course, we have Cure, which can be used for its Cleansing Aura, level 1. So you can actually reduce curse duration just by having this on your Mercenary. The first version of this only had like Poison Res, which is pretty crap. Not a lot of uses of the Rotting Fissure charm to begin with. But yeah, it was you could use it maybe against the Darnell, right, for the Mercenary. But now Cleansing is nice though. You get curse duration reduction, you get poison length reduction. It's really nice, and if you just slap it on your Mercenary, your whole team gets some Cleansing Aura. It's really helpful. It's really helpful to have that. It's a solid rune word. It's not like an insanely high level cleansing, but it's great to have, especially if you don't have a paladin that's running cleansing, or if they don't want to switch to cleansing. It's really solid stuff, and it's very cheap, so it's a very nice team rune word. It's not like used in every situation, obviously, but it has some pretty solid case uses, just like every rune word in the B tier. All these rune words are solid rune words in their own situation. Alright, and then of course we have the final 3 rune words, Hearth, Ground, and Temper. These rune words are pretty much just very situational. mainly mostly used in hardcore. Softcore, I don't even think cares about countering Cinder Charms all that much, but hardcore to counter the Cinder Charms. Keeps your Mercenary alive, maybe in some extreme situations like Temper against Travancore. You could argue Temper because of Trav could be B tier, but it's still limited only to that Mercenary though, and in only very specific situations. I think there will be people that make these, but these helmets are very quickly outclassed by other items. So you're going to see people make them for sure, but just like some of the rest of these runewords in the C tier, but they're not necessarily going to be some of those top runewords making the biggest impact on every situation in the game. But yeah. No, I don't think they're bad. I think they're good. C tier doesn't stand for bad. F tier stands for bad. Oh my god. No, it's no, they're good. They're good. You know, no one thinks Steel or Strength are bad. You know, those enable the early game quite a bit. It's just they're more limited. I'm a hardcore player, so I actually love these runewords. You know, people on hardcore are gonna make these all the time. For my vast majority of friends, though, my softcore friends out in the community, I don't know how often you guys will actually make this. If you hate your mercenary dying to council members and you have 75 fire res on him already, get some fire serve on him. That's definitely gonna help. And there's some other stuff that's gonna help as well. We're not talking about some crazy powerful, crazy effective runewords that are used in like every situation though. All right, at least not down there. In Metamorphosis, you know, it's more limited because it's pretty much just shape-shifting builds, but it is a really strong runeword, but it also doesn't make the builds like strong by itself. Mosaic is literally carrying an entire skill tree. It's just a goal and a Mao. So, I mean, that's and it's carrying it to the top of the tier list. We're not talking about some. This is no joke here. All right, C is for circumstantial. Yeah, pretty much. D is for I don't know. C is for circumstantial on this tier list. D is for dumpster. I don't know. Detrimental. I wouldn't say detrimental. I mean, they don't hurt you. I would say they're kind of dumpster runewords, honestly. And then F is for, well, these runewords are failure out of inception. I mean, that's all it really comes down to. Decomposing. Yeah, something like that. You can always come up with your own acronyms for what the S's and A's stand for in each tier list if you want. S is superb. Super. That's what S always stands for. D is for damaged. No, just darn difficult. Difficult. You know, difficult might be the D actually. See, it's like, yeah, these can do it, but it's not going to nearly feel as smooth as the other ones on top of it, right? They're just difficult. All right, here we go. It doesn't mean they're bad necessarily. They're just difficult. Difficult. Delusional. Derpy. Yeah, there you go. They're a little derpy. You know, they just a little stranger. Okay, here we go. We have, of course, coming up here. You guys can check out these tier lists yourself. This will also be on a YouTube video. You can watch my overview of the tier list and overview of the major movement in patch 2.6. All right, so let's go over the Terra Zones. So new Terra Zones were added, merged, even one was removed, and some were added to already existing ones. So there's a lot of like things that happened because of that. These tier lists have been cleaned up on Maxroll, by the way. If you saw it the first time, there was like one tier list that we launched last season, and that wasn't a good idea because, in truth, there's two very different functions for the tier list, loot and experience. There's two different reasons people run Terra Zones. It's not just, you know, having one list was super hard to do because you had to consider both loot and experience, and they're very competing. They're very competing functions. You'll notice these two tier lists are very different. they you'll see terror zones at the top of the tier list for loot that you're gonna see at the bottom of the tier list for experience. And so that's why we found it so difficult when we first just made one list. So this is why Maxroll, and I came up with the idea. Why don't we just split the tier list into 2 tier lists so that people can understand if you're trying to farm them for loot, these are the better ones. If you want trying to farm them for experience in any player count, these are the better ones. Okay. At any rate, that actually happened midway through 2.5. We split them, but now, of course, in 2.6 we had to adjust some things because of some additions and removals. The first things first, everyone can celebrate this. Everyone can celebrate this. We need more tier lists. Oh yeah, I mean, never enough, dude. That's what I said. I was like, we need more. It's not enough tier lists. How many do we even have here now for D2R? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, 9 tier lists. I'm sure we can find a 10th at some point. I don't know though. We'll figure it out. Okay. At any rate, 10 solid, tier lists that are pretty good. Smashing Chaos, Players 8, we got everything represented here. Okay. Next. So let's do experience. So Cross Sewers was removed. Oh my goodness. This terror zone, nobody wanted to do this terror zone ever. I tried to motivate people to try to get experience in there. People weren't having it. It's hardcore too. So it's like this area is just like junky, and the density sucks. You'll die for meager experience in there. It's really junky, but it was removed. So that one has the word "remove" next to it. It'll be removed. Nothing on the moved into the S tier on the experience list with the 2.6 adjustment we're doing. Some things moved out of it, so we just made it slightly more exclusive. It's really limited to the ultra dense areas that are super fast, super accessible, tons of elite packs, and of course the crazy experience from things like Bale Waves and Chaos Seals at the very top of the S tier, which, believe it or not, some of these really ultra dense areas aren't very far behind. They're very close to these areas, but Tower Rush's Tombs is actually better, believe it or not, if you have people that can keep up and can shred Players 8 than even Chaos and Worldstone, because these take too long, mostly because of spawn times and things like that. So Tower Rush's Tombs is so dense, and the monster types give such good experience and you can just hit them one after the other without leaving the game. That it's actually even slightly better than some of these other ones, which is pretty nuts. But at any rate, these are the top experience terror zones. Nothing moved into the S tier though for 2.6. Of course, we have some new ones though. So Barracks was attached to the jail. Barracks is sick. Barracks has a lot of elite packs. Barracks is very dense. Barracks is also easily accessible. So that actually bumps up jail a bit. Barracks is now carrying jail up to the A tier. So jail was probably like B tier before last season. Now jail is going to be a really solid terror zone for experience. So definitely check that one out. We're going to see Cold Plains and Cave. This was more of a readjustment, trying to make sure that S tier was like really solid. All of these areas were just super fast, high experience. These areas are still sick though. Still tons of easy elite packs. Still tons of experience down in the cave. But Cold Plains, if anything, Cold Plains kind of brings it down a little bit, but overall, like, Cave is still really sick. It's just maybe not quite as sick as maybe some of these other areas because the density isn't quite as high. Cold Plains and Cave, very sick terror zone for experience. Glacial Trail, Drifter Cavern. So Glacial Trail was always solid, but the problem is that it was kind of small because it didn't have a side area. They put Drifter Cavern on top of it, and now you have tons of elite packs, you got tons of urns, and you got high experience monsters. So now Drifter Cavern is also going to be carrying Glacial Trail up into the A tier, a new addition to this terror zone. Ancient Tunnels is just a new terror zone by itself. I always wondered why it wasn't last season. This is an amazing area, insanely compact with tons of density and elite packs. Really sick area. Definitely a little bit fast though, and a little bit small. So that's the only thing kind of holding it back, maybe from being in the S tier, because it's going to be a bit slower. But in terms of like repeating this area, but once you get in that area, that's really sick experience in there. So that's going to be nice. Ancient Tunnels making its debut into the A tier. Everyone's favorite area level 85 farm for a cold sork. I like Mr. Llama did his entire grail in the Ancient Tunnels pretty much. You guys should know what that place is. Pretty sick stuff. Awesome. Alright, we have next up the Dark Woods. Darkwood is also now being carried up from the C tier to the B tier via its new appendage, Underground Passage. So now it's not this really small Terror Zone anymore with just a few elite packs, like 5 or so. Now you get all of Underground Passage 1 and 2, and the only thing that really kind of holds this area back is that it's a little too big for how many packs are in there. It's kind of massive, kind of unwieldy, especially compared to things like the pit or the cave, which are a lot more direct, much more compact comparatively. They're really big, but they still have a lot of elite packs, so that's going to be some pretty solid terror zones coming up into the B tier here. B tier is solid for sure. Great Marsh is a new one coming to the B tier. Those zombies give a ton of experience. The only problem with Great Marsh really is Soul's kind of hurt, and everything else is kind of an annoying enemy in there, but there's definitely some sick enemies that give a lot of experience. And it's got a lot of elite packs all the way up Great Marsh. Make sure to get that Great Marsh waypoint. There's actually motivation to get that waypoint for the first time ever. Check that out. Of course, we're also going to get that Spider Forest and Spider Cavern going down 1 tier apiece. It's not bad. By the way, exclamation tier list if you guys want to follow along with this. The link will also be on YouTube. You can check out any aspect of this list, not just what changed from last season. If you've never seen them before, you can check them out for sure and learn more about how strong everything is in the game. Spider Forest, Spider Cavern. This is just kind of a readjustment. It maybe was a bit overrated slightly for a while there. The density isn't crazy high. There's some high experience enemies here and there, but sometimes the elites aren't very good. The birds don't give a lot of experience, so in some ways it's kind of right there with Great Marsh. Black Marsh on the whole, kind of similar to Underground Passage and Darkwood. These are both brand new Terror Zones that are 1 Terror Zone now. It's pretty sick. It's pretty similar to Darkwood Underground Passage. I would say they're even slightly more compact though, but a little bit less density. So yeah, there's an advantage and a disadvantage versus this one, but overall they're both pretty solid B tier Terror Zones for experience. And then everything else in here, there's got some high experience monsters maybe, but maybe not as consistent as some of these other areas, blah, blah, blah. And then we go up into here. C tier, Bloody Foothills has been merged with Frigid Highlands, and Abaddon was added on top of that. Now, these red portal areas don't have a lot of elite pack density, but they can have pretty decent density. It was bumped up at some point, I think in 2.4. So not too bad. So these areas are pretty hard though, but they can definitely provide some additional elite packs. The good news about this area now is that it is massive. You don't have to create games constantly anymore with any of these areas like you had to do before with Frigid Highlands and Bloody Foothills. The bad news is that these areas are huge, and it can take a while to find the elite packs or even Abaddon. So yeah, it's spread very thin. Some of these areas are spread very thin, so they're good. They're solid, but maybe not as solid as some things. Like Far Oasis has a lot of high experience beetles sometimes. It's more compact, but it's really small. Far Oasis is not that great either. Once you get down to the C tier, these areas aren't really that amazing for experience anymore. I'd say B and higher. That's where you're looking at like solid experience terror zones to varying degrees. Once you get to like C, it's kind of It's not very good. Even Secret Cow level, pretty bad experience. Cows don't give that much experience because you don't have a lot of elite packs in there. It's mainly just regular cows that you're killing. So not a great experience terror zone. Stony Field, the only really redeeming factor from this is that there are a lot of elite packs, but it's really small. And then, there's also experience shrines in there. Travancore, kind of similar, small. Council members can give you experience and other things can, but it's not insanely good. I don't know. There's definitely some good ones. Like there's a lot of elite packs in Arcane, but this area's geography is challenging. And yeah, so they're right at home in the C tier. D tier, Burial Grounds, I would believe, is finally C equals crap. Yeah, D tier is finally the Burial Grounds has been adjusted to where I think it belongs for experience. The density and the infrequency of elite packs in these areas. Zombies can give good experience sometimes, but man, it's a struggle for most builds to keep up and find those elite packs in any of those areas. Pit of Acheron is just really, I guess the best word would be cancerous area. It's a pretty cancerous area, Pit of Acheron. It's a new one. They added it to Area Plateau, so that makes Area Plateau less bad because now it's bigger and there's more elite packs. But man, there's some nasty monsters in there. There's always tons of immunities. There's not a ton of density or elite packs in there, so yeah, I don't know. Some of these areas are just very interesting. So yeah, we got the D is for the stage 4 for sure. Durance, this is like a mini Sewers 3, but it'll never be Sewers 3, at least for experience. There's good monsters sometimes for experience if you want to not be able to see anything when you jump over any of the walls and die to dolls and other things. Best thing to do is kill Mephisto and the council members, but you have to find it first. And yeah, it's just, I don't know. As an experience farm, not good. Some of these other areas as well, not good. Tristram, just super fast, just way too much reloading, and you have to find it on the path. Not good. And then this area, this isn't like movement, it's not changing, but you might notice with the removal of Act 3 Cross Sewers, there is a definitive F tier, which is one Terror Zone. Bloodmoor and Den of Evil. This Terror Zone is horrible for experience. Den of Evil has one super unique at the very end. And not a lot of density anywhere else. Density is very poor in this area, and there are lead packs, but it's very inconsistent. So yeah, you can farm it. The only good thing about it is that it's safe, but for experience generation, it's very bad. Okay, cool. It's its own tier of garbage experience generation for sure. Very trashy stuff. All right, so now let's go into the loot one, which is the final tier list for 2.6. Hope you guys have enjoyed this overview. It's awesome stuff. All right, so I decided when I drafted this, and everyone agreed, that the loot Terror Zone tier list should be a little bit more focused on boss TC increasing for like chances to get griffins and things like that from Mephisto. So there were a couple of adjustments just improving this tier list, not necessarily related to 2.6, but some of them are related to 2.6 because they're fixing Terror Zone boss treasure classes in a lot of cases. So now it's actually justifiable to put some of these areas that maybe belonged here already, but now they actually belong in here. So you'll see that, Dariel is here, Mephisto is here, Bale is here, Diablo is here. So are all the super uniques in Chaos. Super uniques, council members are insane with being able to drop any item in the game. They're just nutty. And then, of course, some really ultra high density areas, which really take advantage of any item in the game dropping from any monster, like Secret Cow Level and Talrosh's Tombs. Yeah, so Durance is a terrible experience Terror Zone. It's D. For loot, it's S, though. You kill Mephisto, that's all you do. Mephisto's loot table terrorized is really sick. So, it's that simple. Wow, loot's pretty good. Just kill the bosses for the most part. And then, of course, the A tier, we have a bunch of really high density areas, maybe areas with really ideal monster types, like ghosts that can drop Zod runes everywhere. It's really cool. Like throughout the entirety of the tower cellar, not just some levels. You get super solid density in all of these areas, making them strong for loot. Really good stuff. Pit's always good for loot. Maybe not quite as good as these areas with the bumped up TCs, but it's really good. And then, of course, you get some other stuff as well. You know, Ancient Tunnels is still A tier for loot. Some of these are just, you know, A tier no matter what. Just really strong areas. And these areas have Eldritch and Shank, so they're really carrying Abaddon in this one. Eldritch and Shank is a A tier loot terror zone for sure. Because now they can drop griffins. They can't do that when they're not terrorized. I think a lot of people don't understand. Like, when an area is terrorized, that means that the higher area level means that now there's a lot of monsters that are restricted as to like what loot they can drop. Now they're not restricted anymore, and so like they're very easy to kill and very easy to get to. So definitely check those out. Got some new ones. We already went over the new terror zones, but you know, some of them in terms of loot are up here in the B tier. There's some awesome major work up in here, and then including, you know, Black Marsh Hole, just decent amount of elite packs. Solid areas. Drifter Cavern's always been a good farming area. Can be a little challenging sometimes and dangerous, but that's about it. Geography isn't like super ideal or anything, but it's good. Kind of like Icy Cellar and Ancient's Way. Difficult monsters, but good if you have a build that can do them. And then, of course, we got things coming down here a little bit. Spider Forest and Cavern maybe being overrated for loot because there's just not enough density to justify it. Same thing here. Not a lot of density. Plains of Despair has ghost monsters, though, which is nice. And then Far Oasis is honestly pretty bad. Any area with bugs is not amazing for... I mean, of course, Kurost would be in there, though. But, yeah. Kurost Temple. Bizarre Ruin Temple just used Feign. Those also have bugs, but it's C tier, so they're a little bit better because it's more compact. Far Oasis, sometimes you get nothing in there. And then these areas are still boo-boo. Like Burial Grounds is not very good. But there's actually something that shares the F tier and the loot tier is Bloodmoor. That's Area Plateau. This is just a terrible area to farm. It's better for experience. A little bit better for experience because the monster types can actually give you some decent experience sometimes, but... yeah, pretty bad. Any rate, that's it. That's all of them. 9 tier lists. They'll all be updated on Maxroll very shortly within the next couple days, maybe within the next 24 hours for patch 2.6. I hope watching this has inspired you to try out some new builds. There'll be new guides on Maxroll. Remember, these are builds that are represented by a guide on Maxroll, so you can check out any of them. Don't necessarily have to want the most meta things. Hipsters, I'm sure, will be looking towards the bottom of the tier list. You know, it's all kinds of fun stuff you can do. So, and some of those old hipster builds that used to be hipster builds are no longer hipster. Phoenix Strike is not a joke. Claws of Thunder, not a joke. These builds are going to be destroying the game once they have full gear. So, definitely take a look and look out for these builds. I actually want to make Claws of Thunder this season. I want to make that particular approach. Not worry about charging up everything. Just want to charge our Claws of Thunder and shred with Novas. You can proc billions of Novas with Dragon Talon. It's crazy. If you don't know how to build these things, like I said, they're going to be on Maxroll, no problem. Never built a Martial Sin in your life, we got you covered. You can totally understand why. Now, there's still plenty of other cool builds, too, that aren't necessarily super efficient or anything, but they're sick, so... the only tragedy of 2.6 is no Shockwave Druid. I was planning to have a Shockwave Druid guide on here. We were planning to write it, and it's not a thing. However, in its place, we got another super cool build, which is Enchant Sorceress. So yeah, that's gonna be Enchant Sorceress, Demon Machine, Enchant Bow Sorceress. It's gonna be fun. Yes, everything is being updated on Maxroll for 2.6. By the time ladder starts, everything will be fully updated on Maxroll. Make sure to check it out for anything you're doing. The day before, we should have most things updated as the day goes on. It's just because Blizzard's taking so long to release the patch. Last time they released the patch like a week before, which meant that we could update everything on Maxroll a week before the ladder. That's not how it works this time, so... yeah, well, anyway, it's there's a lot of reasons why that's the case, but yeah. What am I choosing for a starter? I am going to start Sorceress so that I can help our team push really fast, and then I'm going to hopefully start farming for stuff afterwards to make some really awesome builds, like Claws of Thunder Assassin. So yeah, which will be my guide. All right, Teo is totally rewriting Phoenix Strike Assassin, so it's getting a bunch of upgrades. Anyway, good stuff, guys. Good stuff. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone, and thank you to the Maxroll team for going over the tier list as well. I made some drafts to make it a bit easier, but we all crushed it. They provided a lot of useful input and made these tier lists as good as they possibly can be before 2.6. And I hope you guys are ready to crush it here in this new season. Of course, I'm gonna be pushing the hardcore ladders, so you can watch me at here, www.twitch.tv/darkhumility. We're gonna be going hard. First week, I don't know, it might be 16-hour days for the most part. We'll see how long we can go. Hope to see you guys all there, softcore and hardcore. Of course, check out the chapters if you guys want to see me go over any particular tier list. All right, and let me know what you guys think about the Maxroll tier lists in the comments below. I am the primary drafter, and I'm the one that drafts all the revisions for the tier list, and I'm the tier list guy. So let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you guys think these are the most definitive D2R tier lists on the interwebs. I would love to hear it from all you guys. So thank you. Thank you, peoples. Enjoy the new season. This is sick changes in this patch. Check out the patch. Check out my video where I go over the patch too. Like I said, only one kind of tragedy, which is a Shockwave is no longer a damage dealing spell, but not really. But oh well. Anyway, guys, crush it. Let's get it. Dark Humility. Over and out. See you guys on the live.